Yo, what's going on everybody? It's Zoro Ordinary, aka just Ordinary. In this video, we're going to be talking about King of Hell Zoro. What is it and why is it so different? Could Zoro have unlocked the next Conquerors haki power-up already? Now, Advanced Conquerors has so far been the biggest power-up in the series, even bigger than Devil Fruit Awakenings. It's what differentiates the elite combatants of One Piece from everyone else. Prior to learning about its existence, Oda gave us lots of hints like Shanks and Whitebeard clashing and splitting the sky, Roger and Whitebeard clashing also splitting the sky while not even touching this time, and when Oden scarred Kaido permanently using Advanced Conquerors haki. We then got Luffy vs Kaido where Oda revealed Advanced Conquerors, because without learning Conquerors coding, it was clear that you couldn't significantly harm Kaido. When Luffy first fought Kaido with basic armament in the beginning of Wano, it couldn't even put a scratch on him. After Luffy's first loss to Kaido, he was sent to Udon Prison, where he then learned Ryo, the advanced version of armament haki that gave the user the capacity to internally apply haki to an opponent and hurting them from the inside. And with even Ryo, it still only left minor marks on Kaido. What gave Luffy the chance to even be on a similar playing field as him was Advanced Conquerors haki. These are just a few samples of Advanced Conquerors being used in the series that gave us a thorough explanation of what it is. After Wano, we're introduced to even more examples from other characters like Garp and Shanks. I'm telling you all of this not because I want to list off all the times Advanced Conquerors haki was used, but instead to put into perspective how many examples we have of this ability. If you hadn't noticed yet, I left out the main topic Zoro, and specifically the King of Hell Zoro. He set himself apart from all these instances of Conquerors coding being used. He became an anomaly in all of this. When we look back at these examples, they all look similar. All of them are depicted as haki clashes with the typical black lightning and with some sort of after effect like sky splitting or an entire city being decimated. But for some reason, when Zoro finally figured out how to use Conquerors consciously, keyword consciously, which I'll get back to in a bit, he was able to manifest green flames, which is attributed to being the flames of hell, onto his swords. And not only Enma, which translates to King of Hell or Lord of the Underworld in Japanese language, but also his other two swords, Wado Ichimonji and Sandai Kitetsu. It's not a question of Zoro's Conquerors being different, because when Zoro unconsciously used Advanced Conquerors versus Kaido, it was no different from all the other examples. The only thing that stood out was that Zoro skipped how to use basic Conquerors and went straight to the advanced version. But that can be easily explained because of the nature of Enma. It is a sword that sucks up a large amount of haki from the user, which Zoro had been suppressing since he got a hold of it. So when Zoro finally stopped suppressing his haki output to save Luffy from Kaido, he unintentionally tapped into his dormant Conquerors haki. But because he was putting all his haki focus into his sword, that's exactly where his Conquerors haki ended up, making him unintentionally use Advanced Conquerors haki coding, causing the confusion between Zoro and Kaido. Then a little over 20 chapters later, when he's fighting King, he accepts the fact that he has Conquerors, but because he already subconsciously knew to apply it to his swords, he practically mastered how to do it at that moment. But what I think he actually unlocked is a bit more than just Advanced Conquerors, because what should have just been called Zoro with Advanced Conquerors ended up becoming an entire form called King of Hell, which then had me asking questions like, do characters like Shanks, Mihawk, and even Roger have similar abilities where they have forms that they take on or titles that they give themselves when they're using Conquerors haki in a certain type of way? I think yes, but it goes much deeper than the basic linear type haki logic that we all know, like coding yourself or coding a weapon, launching haki, you get what I mean, the typical stuff. It would be unlike Oda to reveal a new haki power-up without foreshadowing beforehand, so I believe the answers and the foreshadowing we're looking for lies with Zoro's King of Hell Flames. Some questions we need to ask before getting any answers is why when Zoro accepted Enma was he able to manifest the flames of hell, and why didn't Oden have the same flames? Firstly, we have to look at how swords have their own disposition, which we learned in chapter 1033. Just like a human, swords in One Piece have their own personalities and inclinations which get confused for curses. A typical trait of humans when they have different conflicting dispositions, they usually are incompatible, which I think could be the case for swords as well. If the wielder of the sword doesn't possess a similar disposition or a great enough disposition, then the sword will ultimately hurt and disobey its wielder, which Enma had done on multiple occasions with Zoro until he finally accepted Enma for what it was and gained the ability to wield it to its full potential. If Oden was able to use Enma, why didn't he have the flames of hell? Clearly Advanced Conquerors haki alone isn't enough, because once again, when Zoro used Advanced Conquerors haki against Kaido, there were no green flames. When Oden used it against Kaido as well, there also weren't any green flames. I believe there are two possibilities here. The first one is Oden not understanding Enma enough to use it to its full extent. When Zoro acquired Enma from Hiyori and Sukiyaki, who was going by Tenguyama Hitetsu at the time, Sukiyaki tells Zoro that Oden was the only one to ever tame Enma. Rather than saying Oden mastered Enma, he chose to use tame. To be able to tame Enma, all you had to do was to tame its hunger of haki. But to master Enma is more complicated than just that. That mastery is the understanding of bending the nature of the sword to your will. What I believe Oden lacked was the right will to fully understand and align with Enma. Due to Enma being the king of hell, maybe it's more inclined to a demonic entity or will which Oden didn't have or wasn't aware of at the time. Oden used Enma in a partial state. He had tamed its wild nature but lacked in bending the will of his sword to his own. And that's where Zoro comes in. Throughout the story, he's always had something demonic about him. In chapter 3, before we even got to meet him, Kobe calls Zoro a demonic beast and is referred to as a demon in human form. Then in Enies Lobby, it was put into context when Zoro used Ashura, an ability that allows him to manifest 3 heads and 9 arms, arguably his ultimate ability even after King of Hell. In Japanese mythology, Ashura is said to be a demonic being with 3 heads and 9 arms. So when it comes to demonic figures, they usually reside in hell. Do you see what I'm getting at? Even though we haven't gotten an explanation of what Ashura is, more than likely it has something to do with the will of Zoro. So his will and Enma's disposition align perfectly, giving Zoro the ability to fully utilize Enma to its full capabilities. Even though Oden was blessed with an insane amount of haki that even surpasses Zoro, Zoro tamed the sword with the haki he was capable of, plus accepting the will of Enma with his demonic will, combining the two and unlocking the King of Hell sword style, which then manifested into the literal flames of hell. When you think about it, technically Zoro hasn't 100% mastered Enma because he lacks what Oden didn't, enough haki to wield Enma at its full power without having a time limit. Because in chapter 1036, Zoro says if he keeps wielding it at full power, it will kill him because of how much haki is being drawn out of him. The second possibility to why Oden might not have been able to use this flames of hell could also be due to him wielding 2 swords at the same time with the opposite disposition of the other. Remember when I said when humans have different or conflicting dispositions, they usually are incompatible. In chapter 955, we're given descriptions of Oden's 2 swords, Enma and Ami no Habakiri. Enma is said to split the earth to the bottom of hell, and Ami no Habakiri is said to cut down the heavens. What greater comparison and difference is there than hell and heaven? What if Oden was unable to master his 2 swords just because of this reason? I believe if Oden hadn't died so early on, he would have eventually figured all this out. Okay, so even at this point, all that we've answered is the origin of King of Hell flames, but still haven't answered what exactly is it. In my opinion, I believe the flames of hell are both the will of the wielder and the inclination of the sword intertwining and becoming one with one another in perfect harmony, causing the manifestation of a physical power.
Oh my god! Wow!
Besides King of Hell Zoro, there really isn't much more evidence of this. So one could say, well, Oda just wanted to make Zoro's advanced conqueror's power have some sort of aesthetic so that it looks cool or badass. I'm not ruling this out, but I don't buy it. Oda always has an answer for everything. During the climax of the fight at the end of the movie, Shanks and Luffy do a combo attack against the Demon King, but what stood out was that Shanks' sword ignites all of a sudden. Shanks, who has no devil fruit, randomly pulls out a fire attack. I left this part out up until now because it's not canon and I don't want to base my entire theory on it, but it could be hinting at what I call manifestation haki, the ability to manifest your will and or the will of your weapon into a physical form. Instead of it being its own kind of subsection of haki, it is a further evolution of conquerors haki that goes beyond advanced. Maybe this is what Kaido meant when he said haki transcends all. Oda is not one to usually throw in random haki power-ups without foreshadowing them for the future, so I think Oda used Zoro and maybe even Shanks in the movie to hint at the next big haki power-up. No, this might be the prerequisite of a black blade. This might be the final step for a black blade, or maybe there's one step after. I don't think Oda would include the involvement of personalities and dispositions of swords if it wasn't going to lead anywhere, especially towards black blades. Maybe this is how Zoro unlocks black blades for the rest of his swords, so Wado Ichimonji and Sandai Kitetsu, he has to first figure out their dispositions or their personalities so that he can bend it to his will. So what if Zoro can have 3 different flames? So he can have the flames of hell, he can have the flames of Sandai Kitetsu and the flames of Wado Ichimonji, all just accumulate into some massive attack with Ashura, and Zoro use 5 powers at the same time, something like that. I don't know, maybe I'm like, you know, stretching it right now, but I don't know. Let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think the King of Hell is. Make sure to like, subscribe, and I'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace.